Welcome to our 5th annual Mental Health Empowerment Day. We are so excited to be here with you today. It's actually our 6th Mental Health Empowerment Day because we did a bonus one during COVID. Mental Health Empowerment Day is a grassroots organization that was begun by professionals, parents, and friends of all volunteering their time and energy for this cause. Basically, as a teacher and educator and mental health professional, I saw a problem and I wanted to be part of the solution. And thus, MHED was born. Mental Health Empowerment Day has 3 goals. 1, we want to end stigma. We want this issue on the table so everyone is discussing it. It doesn't vanish just because we aren't talking about it. 2, we want to educate people because knowledge is power. The more we know about those who are suffering from mental health issues and their families, we're going to better be able to help them. And 3, we want to build community so no one suffers alone. We are always better when we're working together. We really wanted to be with you all together in one place this year, but as COVID is still not giving us the certainty we needed, we are coming to you again virtually. This year, I have a dual role. Not only am I the co-chair of Mental Health Empowerment Day with the very capable Michelle Viner, but I am also the 2021 UJ Annual Campaign Chair with an equally capable Craig Walters. This year, mental health is a pillar of one of the key issues in our campaign. We are going to be working extra hard this year to make sure that all those who suffer have access to service, that we continue to create a more cohesive system that preserves human dignity, and that we can continue to create opportunities for shared learning. Now, many people in our community need support more than ever. And thus, this year, for Mental Health Empowerment 2021, anyone who reaches out and would like to donate to Mental Health Empowerment Day or any of these initiatives, all of the monies will go to Campaign 2021. Today, we are here to celebrate the power of the personal story because there is nothing more powerful than a story told by an individual, because individual stories can give us hope and teach us major lessons. As we are all coming out of COVID-19, we have chosen to highlight 3 issues that have been especially important this year coming out of COVID. Number 1 is addiction. Number 2, we're going to talk about disordered eating. And number 3, we're going to talk about anxiety. So we are going to bring to you this morning 3 different people with 3 different stories and 3 powerful messages, personal stories of bravery and empowerment. At this point, I would like to invite my co-chair, Michelle Viner, to open up the morning with introducing our documentary and our special guest, Jennifer Marshall. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Leanne, and good morning, everyone. We have lots to do this morning, and as we celebrate the power of the personal story, and to get things started, we want to show you something. This is a documentary that I saw early last year, probably March, just as the pandemic was hitting. Someone told me about it and told me to watch it, and so I did. I watched it once, I watched it twice, and then I think I probably watched it 10 times. I just loved it. And then I went running to Leanne and I said, Leanne, we have to share this work with our mental health audience, our MHED audience. And so that's what we're doing today, and I'm really thrilled. This documentary showcases the work of Jennifer Marshall, who is the co-founder and executive director of This Is My Brave, a stage show of storytellers who take their stories of mental health across the US to audiences. It is phenomenal work that has seen the production of 72 shows in 43 cities and the telling of over 900 mental health stories. It has caught the attention of everyone from Oprah to the Washington Post to the Today Show. It has recently actually made it all the way to Australia, and today we're thrilled to kind of bring it to an audience in Canada to show you the documentary and make you aware of the work. After we watch the documentary, we're going to have the opportunity to speak to Jennifer Marshall and talk to her a little bit about her work and what she does and what she sees the future of This Is My Brave to be. And then after that, we are going to ask Jennifer to join us as we welcome 3 local community members to our stage today to share their mental health stories. And we will see their brave. So we want to get to that. Now, just one point before we do, that there is some sensitive dialogue in this documentary. We don't want to make anybody uncomfortable. So if you think for whatever reason this morning that you would rather just skip the documentary and then join us in 20 minutes or so to join our conversation, then please do so. So that's that. We hope you love it. This is My Brave.
I would like to introduce to you the executive director and co-founder of This Is My Brave, Jennifer Marshall.
Thank you all for being here tonight. I'm Jennifer Marshall, and I live with type 1 bipolar disorder. My journey with mental illness is not unlike the way most of us struggle with it. I hid my pain and feared I would never get better. Thankfully, that horrible chapter of my life didn't last forever. And when I began on that recovery path, I was desperate to find stories from individuals who had found a way to live successful, fulfilling lives despite this lifelong condition that has no cure. This Is My Brave's mission is to get to the place where one day we live in a world where we don't have to call it brave for talking openly about mental illness. We will simply call it talking.
When we go to do a show in a city, we put out these flyers. We're looking for people to tell their stories about mental health and overcoming addiction, and we're asking them to prepare a piece that tells their story through creative expression.
You deserve to be okay.
They're writing an original song or an original poem, or they're writing out their essay that really takes you through the ups and downs of what they've gone through.
My eating disorders and my related struggles, including depression and anxiety, cannot be cured with surgery or medication. They are not something that I can have one day and be rid of the next.
The final product is them on stage in front of a live audience of a couple hundred people.
I would be thrilled to have my work shown to anybody, I don't care who it is, to help, get rid of the stigma, there's no need for stigma. Everybody has the light and the dark in their lives.
Do you often tell your story?
No, this is very new for me. Very new for me. In fact, a lot of the things I'll be telling, I haven't told anybody.
It's going to be the first time that I'm actually reading a poem to other people other than my therapist.
It's like super common to be struggling with mental illness, and like you shouldn't have to feel ashamed, and you should be able to speak up and talk about it like you can talk about other illnesses.
We hear stories about depression, about anxiety, about bipolar disorder, about PTSD, and people are coming forward to get folks to understand. It's a very tough thing to go through this audition process.
It absolutely is, because at the end of the day, we want it to be a show that is people enjoy and are captured by. And so if, two people are telling the same kind of story, but one is more engaging and has a nicer sort of flow to it.
I think with the number of auditions you have this weekend, we're going to find the perfect mix of people.
And you're Hannah.
Yes.
All right.
Hannah.
Well,
Okay, awesome.
you know that we Googled you last year during auditions. I'm not sure how I figured out that you were someone that was Googleable. But when you canceled last year, there was a collective,
Oh, really?
Oh, yes.
My first hospitalization was the result of an overdose. It was my first and only suicide attempt, and I was in complete denial. I unfortunately experienced a sexual abuse trauma. Trauma after trauma after trauma, pretty much from the ages of 7 through 20. When I got to a point where I said, enough. The music is definitely something that I have always come back to. I have always wanted to be a musician. When I was going through my bipolar period as a teenager, it was what kept me alive. I will just sing and I will play, and whatever comes out, and it is one of the most therapeutic things that I do for myself.
Woke up on a summer day telling myself I'm okay, telling myself I will be fine. I stand up, try to smile, but everything hurts. I'm getting lost in memories where demons lurk. They scream at me that nothing in my life will work. So when will I be free?
So I was actually supposed to audition last year, and I ended up canceling at the last minute because I wasn't in a space to be sharing my story. So it was really, really awesome this time around to feel like I've made that progress.
Can't stop living, won't stop.
Over the past 12 years, I've been hospitalized 5 times for manic episodes. The first time came out of nowhere after barely sleeping for a week. The second time happened 2 weeks later when I was admitted to the psychiatric ward on Christmas Day. During the years I was having my children, twice I was handcuffed and hospitalized by police officers, taken to the hospital in a police car. I found a community of people who were blogging about their mental health conditions in such a way that I was inspired to share mine. The only problem was that no one in my circle of friends or family was talking about it.
My family, like my mom, she at first was in denial, like I think more so than me, coming to grips with my illness. And she used to call it a nervous breakdown.
She was Wonder Kid, missing her two front teeth.
When Jen first got sick, we didn't know what the future would hold.
We got her in the car. She was sitting next to me, and we're driving, seatbelt on, and I had my hand right here. I wasn't sure whether she was going to open the door and try to get out or do something. Seeing it firsthand really scared me.
We were afraid that she'd be labeled. We were afraid that she wouldn't be able to get a good job again. We felt that it was a good idea for her not to share the information. She didn't for a while, and she felt very, very isolated. I think that that stigmatized her even more.
So I started blogging when my kids were 3 and 1. Too young to understand yet what I was doing, but as they got a little older and I continued writing, I started to talk to them about it because I want to raise a generation that is completely different than previous. I want them to be able to talk about bipolar disorder and any kind of mental illness the same as they talk about physical illness. Vivi, is it raining by you guys?
No.
Oh, why are you still in your jammies? Even if you yourself don't live with a mental health issue, you can't ignore the statistics that you know someone, whether you realize it or not, but you know someone who's going through this, whether it's a family member or a friend. All right, I love you.
I love you too, Mommy.
When we listen to these stories, we can learn better how to support loved ones going through it.
I've probably written more poems in my time here on this planet than I can remember, but what I do remember of my poems is that they've gotten me through. Through diagnosis to treatment to death in the family, with headphones on, with cigarette-stained fingertips, writing poems, anxious thoughts accompany me every red line train stop. My mind would finally stop pacing around the train station, but if those batteries died, those thoughts got so much louder, and it happened many times. Anyway, back to this poem.
I've been writing forever, but most of it is I write when I'm sad. It's been many times I've written what I thought were suicide notes and turned into poems, you know? It's not like I would ever do that, you know what I mean? But like, I've had a real difficult time. First I was diagnosed ADHD, and then I was diagnosed bipolar, and I didn't know what that was, so I had to research it and found out that it was, you know, all these great people had it and stuff, so that's how I kind of looked through it.
Started performing poetry at speakouts and became a beast, a regular Walt Whitman, who, by the way, was a manic depressive and one of the best poets who's ever written. I've written so many poems and now I teach it like a prescription. And yeah, I have anxiety, I'm smoke-free, drug-free, and hoping to have children. I read Bukowski for therapy and Chuck Palahniuk for a laugh, and I'm in love with Leonard Cohen, Sylvia Plath, and Emily Dickinson. And one of them, if not all of them, had some form of mental illness. And all of them, yes, all of them, yeah, all of them were brilliant.
I was on a medication that didn't work, and I had a total cognitive breakdown. Recovery it's non-linear. It's been a slow process. My wife asked me why I did it, why I wanted to do This Is My Brave, and I said that I feel like I lose a lot, and this time I wanted to win, you know what I mean?
OCD is fine with me. Bipolar, Hendrix had it. And Van Gogh was depressed, and Monet painted water lilies. I saw them, I could smell the paint, I was just at it. And Princess Leia had mania, and she was an author and a friggin' princess. And Lincoln was our best president, and he did it living with depression. And Beethoven was deaf and wrote the dopest music, so what makes you think you can't do it? And I'll write another poem tomorrow with a cup of coffee. And another one when I'm anxious. And another one again at lunch, and another one at breakfast. Because I'm a poet with schizoaffective. But now I stop this poem suddenly, take a breath, and exit.
Oh, you are brilliant. You are so brilliant.
Yes.
I
It was
loved
amazing.
it. I loved it. I loved every second of it. When one person decides to be brave, they give others the permission to do the same, and I like to call it brave multiplying brave. Those struggling silently find hope in knowing that if someone up there could get through it, maybe I can get through it too.
People around this country, and for that matter around the world, are reacting tonight to the terrible news of the death of Robin Williams. The 63-year-old actor and comedian died of an apparent suicide.
Fashion designer Kate Spade was found dead inside her New York City apartment. Her death is being investigated as an apparent suicide.
Chef Anthony Bourdain taking his life, found dead in his hotel room in France at 6.
When the media covers a celebrity suicide, the thing that's important to remember, which was actually said by one of our cast members in our Philadelphia show this year, which was the week of the loss of Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain, he said, when a celebrity dies by suicide, the conversation is elevated. which is good that we are able to talk about it. It's tragic for these losses, but what we have to remember is that we are all a celebrity to someone. And that was said by Sean Henfling.
Remember the celebrities in your life, even the ones who appear the strongest, and reach out to them. It's what saved my life.
We forget that every day 123 people die by suicide. Nearly 45,000 people a year die by suicide. 1 in 5 people live with a diagnosable mental health condition. And so whether you realize it or not, you do know someone who's in your life, who's struggling at this moment.
My brother, he passed away about 8 months ago from his mental illness. And I want to be able to not only share my story, but his, and hopefully help others that are living with mental illness know that they can survive and thrive. When I was 5, I would go out and I would just speak to the blades of grass, like perform for them, dance for them. Whenever I was abused, for some reason, that's what I did. I don't even know who sexually abused me. I've been in so much therapy to try to picture the person's face. Close the eyes. And we're gonna set our intention, and you all know how sacred our intentions are. The title of my speech and my piece for the show is Mental Illness is My Superpower. When I was diagnosed with mental illness, I kind of went with it for a while, that I was mentally ill, that I was depressed, that this was my identity. And as I began to switch my perspective of mental illness, what I really understood was that we have a divine connection to love, to wisdom, to courage, and to strength. And when you connect to that divinity that abides in you, you become super, you become strong. I'm sort of always suicidal, and I've been that way since 4th grade. I tried to commit suicide. I jumped off a bridge. And I was actually just gonna drive to the beach and swim out into the ocean until I couldn't swim any longer. And then I got to the bridge and I was like, well, this would be a lot quicker. When my mom died, in that year, I saw my brother fall apart. On his death certificate, it said he died of an accidental overdose, but his heart was enlarged. I think he died of a broken heart. He didn't have the ability to withstand the pain that he felt. I was extremely suicidal that day. So I went outside and I picked the deadest tree, because that's how I felt, like in my soul and my body. And so I sat next to the tree and just as probably Oprah would say, I did the ugliest, loudest cry in the world. And now I just write down what's going on, where I'm in pain in my body, and I bury it at the foot of the tree. And my sons will also write down what their fear is and what they worry about, and we go bury it at the bottom of the tree.
Our organization was devastated last fall by the sudden loss of our co-founder, Anne-Marie Ames. She suffered a heart attack. This Is My Brave wouldn't be here today if she hadn't joined me in what at times feels like the impossible task of tackling the stigma surrounding mental illness.
So I had been writing on this blog called bipolarmomlife.com. And until that article went out, I was anonymous. And so at a party, I was introduced to this woman, and she said, oh my God, you're bipolar mom. And I said, yeah, most people call me Jen. We ended up talking the entire night. And next thing she knew, I had pulled her in as my co-founder. And within 6 months, we had produced our first show.
When I tell people about my struggles of depression, I hear me too, or yes, my brother, my sister, my aunt, my uncle, my son, my daughter. Anybody that you share your story with is going to understand and have a connection.
I've told my daughter's birth story, and that year
from the perspective of a parent who suffered the loss of a child or an advocate trying to motivate a group, but I've never incorporated the mental health aspect. It is a great tragedy to lose the life of a child. Even the shortest lives are still valuable, and the grief of those who mourn the loss of these lives should not be trivialized. The observance of International Bereaved Mother's Day may provide validation to those who have lost a baby through miscarriage, stillbirth, fatal diagnosis, SIDS, or other postnatal infant death, and I'm getting choked up because the validation is needed. I can remember it was 2:33 a.m. when she was born, and everyone in the room started sobbing. One of the nurses screamed out, "Oh my God, she's so beautiful." And I'm trying to figure out, now what in the heck did she expect? I had crocheted her a blanket, and I told them, you need to swaddle her in this blanket, because it was supposed to be a crib blanket. It was kind of big and bulky, so it ended up taking up the majority of the coffin. Went back to work, and there were presents because they didn't tell anyone that my baby passed away. So I had all these presents to deal with. People kept coming up to me, asking me to see the baby, and she looked like a sleeping baby, so I just put a picture of her on my desk. And of course, my boss came out and said to me, "You can't keep that picture here." In addition to major depression, I ended up with anxiety and PTSD. I couldn't sleep, so they gave me sleeping pills, which I could have taken them all and I wouldn't be here today. I called my then husband to tell him that I really needed him. I really needed support. And he told me to get over it and hung up the phone, and I was feeling so low. Took the children to the bus stop, put them on the bus, kissed them goodbye, and slit my wrists. I had Anaya's life and planned out. As soon as you see that positive pregnancy test, you start planning that child's entire life even before you find out the gender. And then when you find out the gender, you start to plan even further. I have 2 daughters. I would never want them to sit in this seat to talk about what I'm talking about. I don't want to hear, "Oh mom, the baby died." The good thing is, everything that I learned, I share with them. Just as husbands grieve the loss of their spouse, parents grieve the loss of their older children who may have lived a full life, we grieve the memories that we would have made.
My thought is we're putting a pebble in the lake, and it's going to ripple out and have more people be able to hear the stories.
Those ripples she spoke of have turned into waves.
I almost forgot my whole entire outfit too. I walked to the car and I was like, "Oh, I forgot my outfit."
At the sunrise, I opened up my eyes, and at the first light, there you are, staring back at me.
The day is here.
So free, and I just wanna be where you are.
Please welcome our first brave storyteller to the stage, Casey Elliott Marr, performing "Mental Illness is My Superpower."
As I stand here in front of you, I'm still in a tremendous amount of pain. But I dig as deep as I possibly can, and I say to it, "You're more than welcome to stay, but you're staying on my terms, and my terms are this: you cannot and will not kill me. You can only make me stronger. You have lived in our family for far too long, and it stops here, and it stops with me."
My rebirth gave me purpose. I have a wonderfully supportive therapist. I cry like I am now. I am now a full spectrum doula who guides families through the loss of a child from conception through age 2.
Mental illness is just a label you put on someone brilliant. So here I am writing a poem about writing poems. Writing in my home on a Saturday night, not a eulogy, not a letter to a lost loved one. Nope, writing about that little word, hope.
Woke up on a summer day telling myself I'm okay, telling myself I will be fine. But when I look around, I can't see everything. It feels so hazy. There's a coat of black, it covers my life. I stand up, try to smile, but everything hurts. I'm getting lost in memories where demons lurk. They scream at me that nothing in my life will work. So when will I be free? But I simply be. I simply
So we were able to get everyone together and just revisit what we did on that evening, and it was emotional, and it was just great to see everyone see their experience and then talk about it.
Mental illness isn't easy. It isn't, because I have it, and it's difficult, but I still can live pretty well. I just have to watch myself, and take care of myself, and breathe, you know, and play music, and write poetry, and do the arts, because it's important.
Just being surrounded by you guys, and you're all so powerful.
I feel like their reaction was that of pride, and knowing that what they're doing and what they're putting out there is making an impact. And I could see it on their faces, and I'm just so proud of them too, so.
You can be amazing, you can turn a phrase into a weapon or a drug.
When I auditioned for This Is My Brave, I realized it's now come full circle. So that 5-year-old self will finally have her moment.
I hope that it changes people's minds about what people can do with mental health conditions. Look at people like they're people and not like they're a disorder.
I used to beg God to just take me. I'm just happy that I have this opportunity to release this amount, this portion of my story.
Storytelling is what saved my life.
Honestly, I wanna see you be brave with what you wanna say and let the words fall out. Honestly, just wanna see you be brave.
Good morning, Jennifer Marshall.
Good morning, Michelle. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you today?
I'm good.
You know, I have 2 words for you. First, of course, is welcome. We are so honored to have you here and talking about your work. The second word is wow. Jennifer, we've just watched the documentary. It is incredible work. I don't know if you heard me in my intro. I think that might be the 10th time I've watched it. And every time it just becomes more powerful. It's just amazing. Bravo to you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. That short film is very, very special to me. And I know we're going to talk about it a little more, but it just really shows the power of storytelling and the transformation that takes place when someone chooses to be open about their mental health.
100%. You know, and I think that's really, I'm going on about how I love this. I've been telling everybody about it. And that's exactly why I do love it. It's, you know, our theme this year is the power of the personal story. We have to put faces to mental health. You know, storytelling in and of itself isn't new. We've been actually using lived experience accounts for most of our MHED events over the years. It's just an incredible way of sharing stories and sharing your truth. But I'm telling you, This Is My Brave takes it to a whole new level. It really is tremendous work. And I want to jump right in. I want to, I've actually seen you interviewed on the Today Show, and you've mentioned it yourself in the documentary. The term "This Is My Brave," the name of the show. Where did that come from? And I know you have some thoughts about it, so maybe you can share that with our audience.
Yeah, I mean, the word brave just came to me when we were naming the organization, naming the movement, and it was brought on in part by Sarah Bareilles, the singer-songwriter, and her song "Brave" came out right around the time where I was trying to name our organization, and I just fell in love with the song. I was playing it on repeat, like 24/7 for like 3 days, and a friend of mine too said, "Jen, why don't you just call it 'This is my brave'?" Because that's what it is. It's people standing up to put their names and faces on their true personal stories. And so we landed on 'This is my brave.'"
Right. And I think, the reason that you're doing this and the reason I started to tell you that we've been doing it at MHED as well, it really is the way to eradicate stigma, or to work towards eradicating stigma, is for people to be brave and come into the mental health arena and tell their truth. And I want to talk a little bit about that, because stigma is an interesting thing. Stigma, I want your thoughts on it. We're at a time now where we are talking mental health more than we've ever talked before. Certainly going through the pandemic, we all were interested in our mental health. Someone said the term one time, we've been in a worldwide empathy class, which I think is very, very accurate. But we're at a time where corporations are putting fundraisers together. We're wearing shirts. We are, athletes are coming forward and being honest about their mental health. We have celebrities coming forward. You mentioned celebrities in the documentary. And sadly and tragically, we're losing people that are known to us, people that we have equated with joy and with abundance and with life. Why is there still stigma, Jen? Why is it still here? Because it is alive and well. Let's just go right back. What is stigma? What is it? What do we mean when we say stigma?
Well, I can't say the formal definition of stigma off the top of my head. I don't have it memorized, but stigma to me is that feeling of being judged because of something you're dealing with. It happened to me back when I was secretive about my illness. I just was so afraid of being judged or discriminated upon by telling my story. And so I wrote anonymously for a year and a half on a blog that was titled Bipolar Mom Life. And I was just bipolar mom because I was so scared of what people would say about me or how they would judge me. And so to me, stigma is that it's like a mark of shame. But with mental health, everybody has mental health. Everybody lives with a brain, and so we have to learn how to take care of our mental health the same way we prioritize our physical health.
Right. I totally agree with you. I think that's everything, actually. We as a community just recently listened a couple of months ago to Simon Sinek, who is the inspirational speaker and brilliant human being who speaks about his why. And again, you're kind of starting to talk about that, of the beginning of This Is My Brave, and why you do this work. This can't be easy work to do. It's inspiring work, but it can't be easy to do. So what is your why? Why do you do this? Why have you been doing this the last 8 years now?
My why is for the next generation. My why is because I have two kids that are now 10 and 13 years old. My daughter turns 11 in December. And what wasn't mentioned in the film is something that happened that my co-founder passed away. Actually, I take that back. I think it was mentioned in the film,
It
but
is
something I
mentioned in
haven't
the
spoken. Yeah, something I haven't spoken about publicly much is the fact that when Anne-Marie passed away, I experienced my fifth manic episode, and it was terrifying. And they're always traumatic. They have always been traumatic for me. But it was just hard for my kids to see their mom sick.
And we had our plan. My best friend, Kelly, came from her house to pick the kids up when it started happening. And my husband called his mom and dad, and they came over, and everybody mobilized around me. And I spent a week in the hospital. I missed Anne-Marie's funeral. And when I came home, I was just mom to my kids, like they knew that I got sick, but that I had gone to the hospital to get medicine to get better. And that's how we talked about it as a family, because at that time the kids were 7 and 9. But what came out of that was something beautiful. Um, a couple months later, maybe a month or two later, my daughter's anxiety emerged, and she began saying like, "Mommy, don't leave me," or "I'm afraid to go to school." And she would cry hysterical tears. And I recognized that as trauma, that she had gone through a trauma seeing her mom sick. And so I talked to the school right away, and they got her in with a school counselor every week. And then we also looked for a private child psychologist. And my daughter did 5 months of therapy, and she came out of therapy having written her first book called My Mommy's Mental Illness. And it's a story of how she got through that difficult period of time. And then when she was done with therapy and had graduated, my son said, "Mommy, I want to do therapy too." And because we had the means, we sent him through 4 months of therapy. And he wrote his first book also called My Mom's Mental Illness. And my kids now have a much deeper understanding of bipolar disorder and mental health in general from having gone through that difficult experience.
So I love that, Jennifer. I love your kids being involved. I love that. There's a whole side of mental health that's about transparency. And our audience is made up today of family members who care for people with mental health issues, teachers who teach kids in classrooms, and people who struggle themselves. And to be able to come out and to be really open and honest with your family is such a great message for people, because I think it really is at the crux of helping and understanding. In your documentary, you go through a little bit of everything. There's trauma, there's grief, there's anxiety, there's depression. What has this work taught you, both within your own family and working with the people that you work with? What has it taught you about resilience? What has it taught you about that transparency and how people need to be treated, no matter how you're coming towards something? How do we need to help and support people with mental health issues?
That's a great question. And for me, what this work has taught me is that we're all going through something, and that I firmly believe that every person will go through some struggle with their mental health at some point in their life. And it's still hard to talk about mental health issues. It's still hard. And I think this, it's changing. I think people are becoming more open. And for me personally, when I told my story for the first time on stage back in 2014, I had this feeling of a physical weight being lifted off my shoulders. Like I could then talk about every part of me, and the good and the bad. And that's, I think, why the work of This Is My Brave is so important, because I have seen our alumni who have been storytellers on our stages grow and blossom and just become so, you know, full of excitement about their future, because that stigma and shame is no longer on their shoulders. And so, it's just important that we look out for each other. And if you notice signs or symptoms, which they're not always visible, but there are some physical signs that show up, but also just that, the look on a friend's face that they're down, and make time to ask them how they're doing. And I think we just don't do enough of that.
Yeah, because the other side of speaking your truth is having someone listen to it, right?
Exactly.
The words, I think it's actually in the song, don't let your words be anything but empty. Like, the words need to be heard by people. And I think people are somewhat intimidated is maybe the right word about, or just thinking what they could possibly do to help somebody. But really, I was interviewing somebody recently who said, you don't need any education to care about another human being, right? You just have to have that empathy. And, we see the family support. Your parents in the documentary really touched my heart. I think there are a lot of people watching today who have cried your father's tears, who have felt that, fear and trepidation. But really, it's just being there. It's being there. It's finding the appropriate help. It's really loving somebody through it. And I don't think it has to be more complex than that.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, Michelle.
Yeah. Okay, so 75 shows in 43 cities and 900 stories told. That's just amazing. I'm sure the pandemic impacted all of that, though. How did you have to pivot through COVID to get the word out?
Yeah, it was really tough when the pandemic erupted. We were planning our all-star show, which was going to be featuring like 15 of our most, it's so hard because every story on our stage is so powerful and inspiring, but we narrowed it down to 15 or so people. And we were going to be it was going to be like our gala event at the end of March, and we had to cancel that. So that was really devastating. But we learned how to use the technology to still get our stories out there. So we got on TikTok, and we recorded our storytellers at home, and we called the show "This Is My Brave Stories from Home," and did 5 shows in the fall of 2020. So it was great. We had the resources that we were able to do that. But we are so excited to be back on stage, and we just had our first show back on stage this past weekend on Sunday night, and it was outstanding. So there's nothing compares to the feeling of being in the theater, in the audience, or on that stage.
Absolutely, 100%. Right in the mental health arena, like right there. So what are you working on for the future? So if you're starting your new show and working with teens is phenomenal. We know that's an age that needs a lot of help. What's the future of This Is My Brave? What are you working on next?
So I'm so excited. We're working on 2 really, really huge, important projects, and they're with teens. One is our podcast that's coming out, and it will be coming out probably in November. Early November, we'll release the trailer, and it's featuring teens from across the country telling their stories. And then we also have another film in production, and it's a feature-length documentary film that will be available on the wellbeings.org website in next year. We're looking at May 2022 as the release because we're submitting the film to film festivals this time. So we're excited.
It's amazing, amazing. And I can't let you go without just having a little bit of an update on some of the people that we met in the documentary. Jason, the poet, and I think it was Hannah, the songwriter, and Nika, who lost her baby. How are all that group doing? We have to know. Now we're fans.
Oh my gosh. Yes, they are thriving, all of them. Jason started a foundation, and so he has the Oddball Foundation. Casey is teaching yoga, and she's leading a yoga retreat in Africa in January or February. Neka is doing well. She is doing a lot of political activism work in Boston. And who am I missing? Hannah. Hannah is in Nashville, living in Nashville, singing, songwriting, and she'll be performing in an event for us coming up in November in the Nashville area. So they're all doing so well, and
I love to hear that.
It's so fun to watch them grow.
I bet. I'm since I'm now this is my brave groupie. I have to ask the question. Jennifer, Jen, to our friends, thank you for your time today. Thank you for talking about your story. I think, we have to keep at that stigma. And this work is just, what's so incredible about it is it's so simple but powerful. And every time one of your speakers takes the stage and says some words, there's somebody in the audience listening to those words. And they take those words into their heart and they make that part of their story. Once you tell a story, you can never untell it. And it's like, Anne-Marie said of blessed memory said in the documentary, the water, it goes into, the ripples become waves. And those waves are really what's eventually, hopefully, please, going to eradicate stigma. So your work is absolutely incredible. In the Jewish community, we say kol hakavod, which the translation means with respect and honor. And so we wish you kol hakavod in your work going forward. May you go forward in strength with it. We will be watching. You now have a bunch of Canadian fans. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It's been an honor to be with you and to share the work of This Is My Brave.
Thank you, Jen. And I hope you will stay with us, because now the next part of our MHED morning is we have some local community members who are going to show their brave. They are all three amazing people who are going to take the stage, the COVID stage, from their homes and tell their mental health stories. So I hope you can join us to do that. It would be our pleasure to have you watch what we're offering from Toronto.
I can't wait to watch. Thanks for inviting me.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jen. Be well.
Thanks, Michelle.
Hi, my name is Seth Zosky. I'm 21 years old and I'm from Toronto, Ontario. I'm very happy to be here today. I am a singer, songwriter, actor, and musician. And I'm here today to talk about my story in regards to mental health, and share, my experience around it and spread some love to those who need it. So I want to talk about how real anxiety is and how much of an impact it can really have on one's life. I truly know what it's like to be afraid of your own mind. And that's what I really think anxiety is. It's being afraid of your own mind. And it's just learning ways to cope with that. Anxiety affects so many people in so many different ways. It could be very severe or very minor, but it's all super real and super important. And we need to take care of it. I'm myself am on a journey to find what helps me thrive, what helps me cope, and what helps me stay happy and healthy. So I'm gonna go into a bit of my story now. So I first experienced anxiety when I was super young, growing up. I couldn't sleep at night. I would think the house was going to get robbed. I thought I was going to die in my sleep. And then sometimes I just didn't know why, but I couldn't sleep. I would just stare at the ceiling for hours on end. And I had a bunch of friends during the day. I was totally fine. And then I couldn't go for sleepovers because I'd be terrified. And as I got older, that kind of started to get a little bit better. But my anxiety still was very present in other ways. I just would never talk about it. And I think that's what's key. Basically every day I would have super intrusive thoughts. And sometimes it would completely ruin my day, take over my whole being, and I wouldn't be able to do anything. It would be super debilitating. And as I think back, that happened for years and years, every single day. Then it really hit me in the summer of 2019. So 2 years ago, I was in Newfoundland on a theater contract with Stephenville Theater Festival, doing the show American Idiot and the Green Day show, and Let It Be, a Beatles review show. And towards the end of the rehearsal period, I started experiencing all of these very debilitating symptoms, and I'm going to list them because I think it's very important to the story. I had nausea, dizziness, extreme fatigue, heart palpitations. My heart rate was all over the place. My blood pressure was dropping. I had terrible muscle spasms, tightness in my chest. I was shaky. I had tremors. I had sweaty hands, cold feet, and I was just convinced that there was something very seriously physically wrong with me. There was even one time at night there where I was in bed and I had to go to the bathroom, and I tried to get up and I physically could not. I was in complete paralysis. I couldn't move my arms or legs. So I went to the hospital. I had multiple trips to the hospital and no answers as to what could possibly be going on. Eventually I had to drop out of the show, unfortunately, and go back to Toronto because it was getting quite serious. In Toronto, I saw more and more doctors and got no answers. And that's when I went to see a therapist, to talk things through, to see if there's anything I could figure out. And I started to realize that with the help from the therapist, that in the last 6 years, I was nonstop running around with school, sports, music, extracurriculars, and never talked about these thoughts in my mind that continuously happened. And all of these thoughts were bottled up in the back of my head, whatever, it could have been in my subconscious, and they eventually manifested themselves physically. And I still am a little bit in denial, which is quite normal, but I was in denial at the time and convinced that there was something physically wrong with me. I eventually came to terms with the fact that I do have a generalized anxiety disorder, and I saw a psychiatrist and I began taking medication, and these were all massive, massive steps to help me and get me to where I am today. I'm doing much better. I still am very much on this journey. I don't know if it will ever end, but there's just ways to cope with it, and I need to learn how to deal with it. Much of my personal anxiety roots from being a hypochondriac. So a hypochondriac is basically the fear that I have a serious medical condition. And a lot of the times I just have those thoughts and I don't talk about them. But I've realized it's super important to, when I'm struggling or panicking, or when I think something's wrong, I need to talk about it. I need to talk to someone. And that's really the main message I'm spreading today, is you have to know that you're not alone. And that anxiety or a mental health disorder or issue does not need to define you. It does not need to be your identity. Everyone's anxiety can stem from different places or past traumas. Mine manifests itself physically. A lot of people it can just be certain emotions. You need to know that when you feel overwhelmed, you have to remember that a little at a time is how it gets done. One thing, one task, one moment at a time, because you can't expect more of yourself. I like to think that life is 20% what you experience and 80% how you respond to it. So if you're having bad thoughts, it's all about how you learn to respond to it. That's the most important thing. So there's a saying from John Kabat-Zinn, you can't stop the waves because there are things you can't control, but you can learn to surf. And I think that's the most important thing. So, all this time struggling with anxiety, the number one thing that helped me through it was music and the power of music. I am such a strong believer that music is a universal connector. It can truly help heal. So as a songwriter, the biggest thing for me was to sit down and write songs and just get it all out. That was one of my ways of coping with this mental health disorder. One of the many ways. So I've written a song. It's called Just Breathe, and you're going to hear it later on today at the end. But many people will tell you to just breathe when you are experiencing anxiety. But it's much more than that, I think. Many of the times I've been struggling, I haven't actually been able to breathe very well. So how could I just breathe? Thank you so much for listening to my story and having me here. Please remember that you are truly not alone.
Hi everyone, my name is Lisa Scheinfeld. I'm a 47-year-old mother to 3 amazing children, 15-year-old, Tyler, 13-year-old Adam, 11-year-old Cooper. I'm here today to share a story about my struggle with an eating disorder that spanned over 2 decades. And in this time, I have shared my experience with many people, virtually, in person. I've written articles. And I thought that the greatest thing I could do with the worst thing that happened to me was share my experience, because when I was going through it, there was nobody I had, so I felt very alone. And mental illness is a very isolating disease. So by sharing my story, I find that it's opened up a lot of people's eyes to feel less alone, to share their stories, and to seek help. I lost over 6.8 years and $96,000 to my eating disorder. I swallowed over 300,000 laxatives. An eating disorder strips you of your personality and dramatically changes your appearance and outlook. It's persistent and draining. Clever and manipulative, it took ownership of my every thought and every action. It may have felt like a friend when it first showed up, but it quickly became the worst enemy I could ever imagine. The fact that I am here today is a miracle. When I was 40 years old, my weight was what an 11-year-old should weigh. I don't share the number because numbers are an eating disorder's favorite weapon. It thrives on knowing the potential of what your next moving target is. Eventually, when I tried to get help, I couldn't. I was told, believe it or not, I was too underweight. My BMI was too low, and I was a risk to any program I looked at. So what do? I tried a million times to recover, and I wanted to, but wanting to and being able to are completely different things when it comes to an eating disorder. Nobody likes having an eating disorder. Don't think your friend, son, daughter, sister, uncle, or brother enjoys not eating, purging, counting calories, or over-exercising. They don't like it, not even a little bit. But you convince yourself that you do because recovery seems impossible. You believe that you can't recover, so you don't. Developing an eating disorder wasn't an impulsive decision, but a slide so gradual that I barely noticed what was happening. Hundreds of times, while I lay on the washroom floor, curled up in the fetal position, I thought I would not live to see the next day. I would shut my eyes to try and fall asleep, but the pain was so intense and so excruciating, I couldn't. I would often cry with what little energy I had, praying to make the pain stop. As you become so wrapped up in the illness, you lose sight of who you are and allow the eating disorder to become your identity. It takes on a life of its own. Every decision, every action is based around the disease. You plan out your day meticulously so that you can engage in eating disorder behaviors. It becomes all you think about and the only thing you care about. You become addicted to being addicted. People who suffer from eating disorders are known to be perfectionists, people pleasers, and are driven to succeed. I was never encouraged by my parents or brothers to work at 150%, not even 100%. They told me to just do my best. They were proud of every accomplishment and provided support when I failed. But I decided to do everything above and beyond what was necessary. My eating disorder was never an attempt to fix any horrible flaw. My eating disorder began rather innocuously to make myself perfect. So this became a coping mechanism for me. When I couldn't do everything, I turned to my eating disorder. That is how I coped when I didn't want to cope. What I failed to realize was that no matter what I did, the things I was trying to escape from would still be there when the laxatives wore off. Eating disorders, like many other mental health conditions, are difficult to talk about. They're wrapped in shame, stigma, and the fear of being viewed differently. So I kept it very quiet for the first few years back in the 90s. But as my weight began to drop, people began to notice. I became withdrawn. I was making frequent trips to the washroom. I was not the vibrant, energetic, or outgoing person I used to be. But I wasn't ready to admit that I had a problem because I didn't think there was a problem. I had everything under control. My family supported me, stood by me, and did everything in their power to help me every single day to battle this illness. But it's not easy. I didn't want their help, because I didn't think there was help to be needed. Eventually, when you do realize that the problem is in fact a problem, you don't want help because your eating disorder has become your whole entire world and you don't want to live without it. You don't know how to live without it. You don't realize that if you continue down the destructive path, you likely won't live long enough to have any life at all. But you are invincible. Nothing will happen to you. I had it all under control, I thought. That is what the eating disorder reminded me of and convinced me of every single minute of every single day. None of what I did lets me look back with fond memories, good times, and great experiences. Nothing you think, do, or feel will ever bring you the kind of happiness you think it will bring you. The problem is that every single time I engaged in eating disorder behaviors and was shown how terrible this illness was, the strength of it pulled me right back in. I have been in the washroom for hours. My stomach is cramping. I'm sweating profusely. I am dizzy and exhausted. I have vomited numerous times. I alternate between sitting on the toilet and lying on the floor, trying to find a comfortable position. A knock at the door. "Mommy, when are you coming out?" "Soon, maybe 10 more minutes." A piece of paper appears under the door. "I love Mom." My 6-year-old son slips this note under the door. All he wants is for me to play with him, but instead I have overdosed on laxatives and once again have become a hostage to the bathroom. I promised that this would be the very last time, but my eating disorder made sure that didn't happen. During COVID, I was approached by so many parents telling me that they had noticed changes in their children's eating patterns and were worried that lockdown was leading to the development of an eating disorder in their loved one. I have always said, since I started talking years ago, that I'm not a medical professional. I have no educational experience or training that can let me provide the kind of knowledge necessary to medically treat an eating disorder. But what I do have is life experience, and my experience is what I share. I know what it's like to sit at a table with your family at dinner and feel like all eyes are on you, watching every single morsel of food go in your mouth. I also know what it's like to come up with a way to manipulate your family at dinner to make them think you are eating every single morsel of food. I also know how physically and mentally exhausting an eating disorder is. It's all about tricking yourself and tricking those around you. It's not something you actually realize you are doing until you are so knee-deep in the disorder it has become your full-time job. Friends, family, school, work, and everything else that was important to you becomes insignificant. You wake up thinking of your day and how eating, not eating, exercising, purging, or coming up with excuses to avoid social situations will play out. It is the only thing you think about, the only thing you care about, and the only thing that is on your mind the entire time you are awake. Being at home with our family for such an extended period of time during COVID, parents noticed a lot of changes. They were blaming COVID for the development of a potential eating disorder. Now, I'm not saying it didn't do this, but what I truly believe happened was that the more time together meant we started to notice more about each other. 24/7, 3 meals a day, snacks, television, online learning, inside all day, every day means that we started to see what we haven't always seen. I gave up my eating disorder in 2004 when I wanted to have kids. Cold turkey and never looked back. But the underlying issue was still hiding, waiting to come back. Kids were the most important thing to me, so having them took priority over everything. But 10 years later, it came back overnight. This time, it moved fast. I lost 30 pounds in 2 months, and those closest to me knew exactly why. I was taking laxatives every 2 to 3 days, and the quantities were increasing at an exponential rate. 10 years earlier, I vowed that I would never take a box of 60, and I never did. This time, I was taking hundreds at a time until I got to over 250 laxatives in one day. It would take me over an hour until I finished them all. For those of you that don't know, the recommended dose is 2 to 3 laxatives under the physician of a doctor. So I was taking approximately 9,000 more than the suggested dose. With that comes horrifying side effects. I felt so close to death on numerous occasions that I truly believed that the eating disorder had won. But my body continued to amaze me. It fought like hell every single time to give me another chance. And even though medical professionals had my body already, My mind was not. My body continued to amaze me. It fought like hell every single time to give me another chance. The biggest obstacle of a mental illness is having your mind to want it, not need it, but really, really, really want it. I wanted to share my story of how an eating disorder tried to tear my entire life apart and how I found the courage to put the pieces slowly back together and change my life. I knew if I didn't end it, it would never end and it would eventually kill me. I had the tools, I had the knowledge. It was time to take my will to live, or my family would need to bury me at 40 years old. I started talking about my disorder and being open about my struggles. It was difficult at first, but as I began to see others relate to me, I became more and more confident about the need to shine on a light on the very thing that kept me in the dark and in pain for so long. Recovery is a challenge. It is the hardest thing I have ever had to do in my life. But recovery is not as difficult as living with the wrath of an eating disorder. The recovery process has taught me to turn my experience into something positive. Although I suffered a tremendous amount of pain when I was struggling with my illness, I also grew stronger and gained a sense of direction during the process. If I continued down the destructive path I was on, you wouldn't be listening to me share my story of how I recovered from an eating disorder. You would be listening to the eulogy from my funeral. Thank you for letting me share my story.
Good day, my name is Remy Elzas. My pronouns are they, them, their. I would like to first say that this is both an honor and a privilege to be speaking at this event. I would like to begin with telling you a little bit of background of myself. I was born here in Toronto in the Orthodox Jewish community. I grew up in the Clanton Park area. I grew up with two loving parents who gave me everything that I possibly needed. Unfortunately, the school systems were a bit, they were a bit hard for me. Growing up in the community, I didn't look the part of every other Jewish kid. I was adopted and I got picked on a lot because of it. It was very hard for me growing up. Education was not something that I was at the forefront for. My sister was super good at education. She was getting the top marks and I fell second suit to that because I just wanted to have fun. I enjoyed playing, having fun with my friends, the very few friends that I did have. As I grew up, the school systems really failed me. The teachers did not have the skills to take care of someone who had such severe ADHD. I remember being at Sick Kids Hospital and they would give me all these different drugs to cope with my ADHD. And some days I would be put into like an overdose mode where I would sit there and stare into space for hours on end because they gave me too much of one medication. I still remember to this day clearly what Dr. Itzkowitz said to my mother, that you should be careful of Remy because he has an addictive personality. At around 8, I still remember today being in Shoal and my father passing me my first shot of scotch. And that sense of ease and comfort that washed over my entire body. For the first time in my life, I felt okay with who I was. I didn't have to lie about who I was. I didn't have to try and impress people. I was accepted for who I was at that given point because all my other friends were drinking and it was just a fun time. Of course, for me at the beginning, drinking was something that wasn't, like I'm going to do it every day. It started very slow with one shot on Shabbos. And then the next week it was 2. By the third week, I was taking a bottle and going out to the back of the Shoal with my friends and drinking until I got blackout drunk. I remember my friends' parents would say, you can't bring Rummy over to the house anymore because he throws up on the couch or he steals our alcohol, which obviously isolated me as a child. My parents always said that if I was in the room and I was at home, at least I was being watched. And I wasn't out till like 6 a.m. with my friends. I was just at home. But my alcohol alcoholism progressed. It progressed very quickly. So much so that by the age of 13, I was smoking marijuana. By the age of 15, I was doing cocaine and ecstasy and mushrooms and acid. And I was, going out to raves in the city of Toronto. And I was, I didn't want the party to stop. I enjoyed that feeling that came over my body so much that I would have to leave the party with more drugs because I didn't want it to end. Eventually, school just fell off my radar. I was held back around 2 times by the time I was the end of grade 9. And the school system basically said, we can't have you here anymore because you are too old and you're a bad influence on the younger kids. I remember going to like 14 different high schools in grade 9 alone in Baltimore, Maryland, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Rochester, New York, all over Toronto, Hamilton. I just wasn't good at school. I wasn't paying attention. I never settled down. And drugs and alcohol were with me at that whole time. For me, my alcoholism and my drug addiction progressed over the next few years. Things just kept getting worse. Every line that I said that I wouldn't cross, I crossed. At the age of 21, I got married. I think 3 weeks later, I got diagnosed with HIV. And a year later, within a hard addiction problem, using Oxycontin and morphine and things like that, my marriage fell to the wayside. I had lost custody of my son, who I haven't seen now in 12 years. These are all things that happened that I would lose in my life because I put drugs and alcohol before everything. I had to get high. There was no other option in my life. I couldn't deal with the feelings and the emotions and all the things that were too difficult for me. I couldn't feel them, so I used. That was my solution to my problem. I had gone to treatment over 7 times. And at the end, when things got really, really, really bad, I was living in East Hastings in Vancouver, homeless on the streets for 9 months. I was living with suicidal tendencies on a daily basis. I did not want to live the way I was living, but yet I had no idea how to stop it because I had been to treatment 6 times already. What was this going to do? What was going to be different this time if I went to treatment, if I would reach out for help? I wasn't there for myself even. Luckily, I was still in contact with Jax at that point in my life. An organization that never turned their back on me. They kind of let me run my course. And when I was ready, they were there to help me. They were there to give me the options and the tools that I needed to get my life on track. So I went back to treatment on December 25th of 2018. I was struggling to live at that point because I was going through withdrawals. I was in deep psychosis, running around the streets of downtown Toronto with no shoes on in the middle of winter, screaming at objects and figures that weren't even there. I was in such darkness, and something came over me and something told me to reach out for help one more time. And I did. I went to a treatment center for a 2-month stay. I went to a pre-treatment facility. I learned that I needed to have an entire team to help me with my life. I needed psychiatrists. I needed drug counselors. I needed counselors. I needed friends and family who were always there for me in the past, but I pushed them away because of the lies, of cheating, of stealing, all the things that I did to my family and friends that I needed to show them that, you know what, I'm a different person today. I'm taking my life into my own hands and I'm making a difference. Because sorry didn't mean anything to the people in my family because I had said sorry 1,000,000 times. What they wanted to see was action. Because for them, action would speak louder than words. I was given the ability to go back to school. I graduated top of my class in the academic upgrading program. I was asked to speak for George Brown to the new students coming in, teachers would never ask me to do anything like that in my past. I was able to mend the damage that I created with my family. My mother got to carry out the last few days of her life, seeing and knowing that I was on the right path, the path to greatness. I am so grateful for that opportunity, because I don't know if I would have ever been able to forgive myself living the way I was and her living in such fear that I put her in. Today, I work at Jack's. I work at the organization that was there for me, that literally saved my life. And I'm so grateful to them. I'm in college studying to become a community worker, to become a social justice advocate, something that I truly believe in, something that I've always tried to strive for. And today I have been given that opportunity, and I am so thankful for that. So thank you very much for your time, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you again for having me. This is the song I talked about previously. It's called Just Breathe. And this is about my anxiety and my journey, and one of the songs I wrote on that journey. Sitting here feeling calm, that funny feeling comes along. It happens many times a day. When it hits me, I have no words to say. Just breathe, and it will all be solved. Just breathe, and it will all be gone. 'Cause it passes by, and I just wanna cry. It sticks with me all the time. When I feel it coming, I just start running. 'Cause there's nowhere to hide. There's nowhere to hide. Sometimes it comes and goes. Sometimes it'll happen and I won't even know. I laugh it off like it's a joke, when really inside I feel broke. Just breathe, and it will all be solved. Just breathe, and it will all be gone. 'Cause it passes by, and I just wanna cry. It sticks with me all the time. When I feel it coming, I just start running. 'Cause there's nowhere to hide. There's nowhere to hide. It hits me like a storm, and it makes me transform. It comes every night, and I put up a fight. When will this end? 'Cause it passes by, and I just wanna cry. It sticks with me all the time. 'Cause it passes by, and I just wanna cry. It sticks with me all the time. When I feel it coming, I just start running. 'Cause there's nowhere to hide. There's nowhere to hide.
Thank you so much to our incredible speakers for being so brave and sharing your incredible stories. Each of you embodies empowerment, and each of you has taught us so much. Please take those stories out back to your homes, and if you need help, ask for it. As you can see, it is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. This year, Mental Health Empowerment Day was made possible by several incredible donors. We want to thank the Wise Family Foundation and Elevator Digital for making this morning possible. We also want to thank Naomi Parnas and all of her team at KPW Communications. And there are 6 individuals who we must thank at UJA for their outstanding help. Natalie Walden always leads the way, and we also want to thank Jody Katzoff, Allison Weiss, Michelle Dlumi, and Melanie Kushner. All of you have made this morning very special for all of us. Once again, thank you all for joining us for MHED, and we hope to bring you further events. If you would like to be part of MHED, please reach out to us and help us make it happen, or donate through our fund at mhed.ca or by calling the Jewish Foundation of Greater Toronto and target your donation to the MHED Fund. This year, also, our funds will help cover the mental health pillar that is part of the UJA campaign. Thank you so very much, and stay safe, everyone.